What struck me was that in a city like Bristol, and in fact any city, there are thousands of people who have something that they're passionate about, and they would love to turn it into the thing that can generate their income, their livelihood. If you look at what is now 700 experience hosts on Yuup, varied and very, very different, but the one thing they all have in common is they're incredibly passionate.
Dominic, welcome to the Small Business Sessions. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm so excited to hear about Yuup, which is the online marketplace with small business experiences that you've built. Let's go back to pre-Yuup, because obviously this isn't your first time in the entrepreneurial world. You were doing stuff before. So do you want to sort of tell me what you were doing before and how it led to you starting Yuup in the first place?
Absolutely. Well, I didn't realize it at the time, but when I look back now, I think my entrepreneurial journey actually probably started when I was about 11 years old.
Right.
And there were some early lessons there in terms of the importance of customer experience and that, ultimately great customer experience sometimes outpaces innovation, and the importance of data, which has kind of been a bit of a consistent theme. What were you doing at 11? I'm intrigued now that you've said age 11, data and customer. I remember very clearly going to comprehensive school age 11, as you do, and it was a particularly large school. And our classroom was at one end of the site and the cafeteria was at the other. So typically in break time, everyone, as you do when you're 11, would head off for a can of Coke and a Mars bar. But we used to find that we could barely get there and back again in the break. There would be a long queue. So I thought, well, surely the answer is to set up shop in the form room and sell everyone cans of Coke and Mars bars, which is what I did. I commandeered a cupboard and started selling this stuff. Proved very successful for a few weeks. The other classrooms kind of sussed out what was going on, and I was doing a good trade until the school catering company got wind of this and decided that it wasn't fair play, so they shut me down.
Right, really? Wow.
Some important first lessons there.
Very important lessons. Well, after that, you then
I did,
later
yes.
on.
A first proper business, yeah. So I, after a few years in a big American tech company, which was a brilliant learning ground, particularly in terms of developing some commercial skills, which I think probably shaped a lot of what was to follow. I started my first business, which was a company called Oros, and we built digital products for brands and government organizations, so websites and apps, mobile apps, and continued that journey, built a very successul business. Almost lost it when we became over-reliant on one client, very important lesson there, but was fortunate to rebuild and take that business forward, and through a partnership with the UK's largest house builder, who became one of our clients, we were fortunate to be acquired by another agency, a bigger organisation based in London called Zone, who had very complementary capabilities to our agency, and we then embarked on the next stage of the journey, took some investment from Business Growth Fund, and eventually exited to Cognizant, which is a NASDAQ-listed big global tech company. So I kind of went full circle from one large American tech company to another.
To another, yeah. But then Yuup, obviously, Yuup's is a very different business, to that. So how did you end up? That was all over. How did you decide Yuup is the next thing?
Absolutely. Well, there are some common threads. Obviously, technology is at the heart of Yuup as a business. But essentially, as I was coming towards the end of my journey in the agency world, I was starting to think about what next. And a couple of things struck me. First, we'd spent over 10 years building products for our clients. And I quite like the idea of building a product of our own and kind of going on that journey. And second, I liked the idea of doing something that was purpose-led and that had a social impact. And as I guess is the case for many entrepreneurs, the kind of moment of inspiration came from a personal experience of trying to buy an experience for someone. I was looking to gift a local experience in our home city of Bristol. And I discovered that there were quite a lot of what I would call national websites offering spa days and track days and those sorts of experiences. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I was looking for something that was very local, very much kind of our city. And as someone who also lives in Bristol, I'm sure you would get that. So what struck me was that in a city like Bristol, and in fact any city, there are thousands of people who have something that they're passionate about, and they would love to turn it into the thing that can generate their income, their livelihood, and the thing that they need is the support and platform to make that happen. You know, one of the earliest experiences that I came across was a guy on the harbour side in Bristol who was making canoes, traditional canoes. And he was quite happy for people to come along and help him make those canoes. But that wasn't something that he'd kind of actively taken to market. So the more we got into it, we discovered that there are literally thousands of people like that in Bristol. And that was the kind of first spark, if you like, that took us on this journey.
So once you'd got that, how did you? Because there was a few of you, wasn't there, at the start? It was a team. Is that something you'd recommend to other people, to not do it on your own, to have co-founders, or does it have downsides as well?
I think it depends on the makeup of that team, and ultimately, you're right at the beginning. There were a number of us who invested in the business. We'd worked together previously in our previous business, but ultimately we got to the point where the only person working from that group who was working in the business was myself, supported by a small but brilliant team. And of course, that gives you access to a broader network and a broader set of skills. One of my biggest lessons, if you like, from my entrepreneurial journey is that first time out, you're hungry and full of energy and quite naive and making mistakes. I know I made a lot. And when I went into my second venture with Yuup, I was keen to keep that kind of raw enthusiasm and, if you like, a little bit of the naivety coupled with the experience that I'd gained along the way, because I recognized that almost going back to basics and not having over 200 people kind of as we got to towards the end of our first venture, it enables you to really understand the market you're going into and be close to it, which I think is super important when starting something new.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So what did you do? Because obviously it's a website, you go online, you launch, and was it COVID, wasn't it, you launched? Basically,
yes.
So you were kind of launching a physical experience company during a global pandemic.
Absolutely. So we registered the company in January of 2020.
Right.
And I think it was towards the end of March of that year, wasn't it, when we all started to learn about this thing called COVID. And then, of course, April, May arrived and the country went into lockdown. Unfortunately, it had always been the plan to spend 6-9 months developing the brand and the technology. So we came out of the first lockdown and did a soft launch in October of 2020. Didn't make a significant impact, but learnt quite a lot. And then, of course, the second lockdown happened. So it was really April of 2021 when we launched properly to consumers. And in a strange kind of way, the period of lockdown has helped us, because obviously a lot of people came out of that period desperate for human contact, desperate to get out there and do things. We were launching into a market with a product that gave them that opportunity and provided people in their communities with something to get out and do, whether it was foraging or gin tasting or paddle boarding, huge range of local activities to do in local communities.
Beekeeping, which is one I've done.
Of course,
just saying, I have bought a few experiences such up. Amazing. But what about actually physically building the site? Because it's that's so important for you, and there's pricing and tickets and obviously you're working with, like you said, all these amazing creatives and entrepreneurs, but have never run it. A lot of them have never done experiences. They don't really know. So what about that? Do you want to talk a bit through about how you built the actual platform and got people on board?
Absolutely. Well, I'm not a techie, but I'd spent up to that point all of my career in tech businesses in roles that meant that I was very fortunate to kind of understand how to build tech products. And so the plan had always been to work with an external agency to develop our platform, which, as it turned out, was a good decision, because obviously we couldn't get in the same room with them for 6 months. So we literally went through that entire process remotely. I think over the entire journey of building the platform, I think we were in a room together once or twice. So we used a lot of online tools and obviously video to collaborate and build a first iteration of the platform for launch that we were very pleased with.
And what about getting the experiences? How did you convince, because you're brand new, people know the kind of like famous ones, but how did you convince these small businesses that this was, useful for them?
Absolutely. So by the time we got to the stage where we were ready to onboard experience hosts, fortunately, we were at a point in that COVID journey where we could go out and see people. And our approach was very much to meet people in person and literally go door to door. I don't mean on residential streets, but business to business. In many cases, these we're talking about businesses that are a single individual. In many cases, people who had an aspiration to do something, and a great many stories in that period of people who became Yuup hosts having fallen on hard times following COVID. They'd lost their jobs, for example. And so we spent a lot of time talking to people, explaining what we were about, listening to them, understanding their kind of problems and challenges, but also listening to their passions. And that's the thing. If you look at what is now 700 experience hosts on Yuup, they're all varied and very, very different. But the one thing they all have in common is they're incredibly passionate about their thing and what the thing they want to share with other people. So really getting to understand that and get to the heart of it was crucial in that early period.
What about funding? I mean, you crowdfunded, didn't you, at one point?
We did, yes.
What point was that? Was that quite early on?
That was part way through. Yeah. So I was fortunate to be in a position to put forward some funding myself from my previous venture, and through that early period, we had about 7 or 8 angels who invested in the business, and then about 18 months in, we secured investment from BBRC, who are an impact investor based in the west of England, who have been hugely supportive through our journey, both in obviously financial terms, but also in helping us think about social impact and the way that we engage with communities. And partway through that journey, I think it was at the point where we took the first round of investment from BRC, we decided to crowd raise, as you say.
So was it $1 million you raised? Almost $1 million, wasn't it?
It was, yes. But before we went out to actually open the public crowd raise, we were very fortunate to have secured about half of that from angels and BBRC.
Right.
But the total we raised in that round was about $1 million.
Yeah. Is that something you'd recommend? Because crowdfunding comes up a lot. We get asked a lot, I want to raise whatever. And often people say, have raised quite a bit of it beforehand. Don't just go live with zero. Would that be a tip that you'd recommend?
It would. And I think the other tip would be clear on why you're doing it. I mean, obviously raising money is the underlying reason, right? But in our case, there was a real community aspect to it. We recognized the fact that we had built, or were building, I should say, this community of hosts and a group of early adopters, customers who were very passionate about what we were doing. And so we liked the idea of getting them even more involved in the business. And that was a fantastic way of doing it. But I would say it is not, crowdfunding is not for the faint-hearted.
No.
It's a huge amount of effort. I think most founders would say fundraising is literally like a full-time job on top of everything else that you own. But I would say in many ways, crowdfunding is one of the hardest routes to go down because it's very different talking. We've got 326 crowd investors on our cap table, and talking to those, many of them individually, is very different to talking to a experienced angel investor or an institutional investor.
Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely, an advocate of it, and I'm very pleased we did it. But it's a very different proposition to other types of fundraising.
Yeah. How do you communicate? Like, what is because like you say, you've got these 300 odd investors now that want to know what you're doing, don't they?
Absolutely. So a combination of regular written shareholder updates, and then some of those investors regularly get in touch and have regular conversations with them, or in some cases WhatsApp exchanges, and some of them will message me at all times of the day and night because they've seen something which has inspired them and they think would be really beneficial to the business. And that is fantastic to have, that group of people who are passionate about what we're doing and very much along for the ride.
Big thanks to Vodafone Business for sponsoring this podcast as part of our business.connected campaign, which helps small businesses tap into the power of digital connectivity. With business.connected, get support on the technologies and digital business areas that can help you and your business work smarter. Grow online with expert guidance, peer insights, digital skills training, and smart connectivity solutions. To learn more, head to enterprisenation.com/business connected. So on to marketing, how have you got the word out? And on that, on this series of the podcast, we've asking Enterprise Nation members to contribute questions. And one of the questions we have for you is, what are the best and most efficient marketing strategies? So I wonder if you want to talk about, what is your marketing, because you've got, on the one hand, you need hosts, which you've now got loads of, but you needed more at the start. And equally, you've got to make sure those hosts are getting customers. So what is your sort of marketing strategy?
So I would love to sit here and give you a magic bullet and say there was one thing. But I think our biggest learning is that it's a mix of a wide range of activities, both on and offline. And in those early days, what was hugely important was engaging people and talking to them about what we were doing. Obviously, we were doing a huge amount of activity on social, and Gemma, our head of marketing, came up with this brilliant idea of special editions, working with people like Bryony from Bake Off, the TV show, and other well-known local individuals who could help bring our platform to life. And all of that activity contributed to that kind of journey of discovery. But there was also a huge amount of going out and talking to people about what we were doing. And most people probably have heard of the chicken and egg problem in relation to marketplaces. So most marketplaces have either a problem to solve on the demand side or the supply side. And what we quickly learned is that for us, supply wasn't a problem, because just as we discovered in those early weeks, there are thousands and thousands of individuals across the UK who are already or love the idea of sharing their passion with other people. So there's no shortage of supply. But our challenge was cost effectively acquiring customers, and of course, making them repeat customers and then advocates. And when we look at our data now, it's incredibly humbling to see that our most loyal customers have purchased from Yuup 50, 60, 70 times, which over a period of 4 years, tells us that they're buying more than once a month, which is huge testament to the work that the team have done to build the brand.
How do you sort of handle it though, if maybe an experience isn't doing so well, and the founder is a bit like, what's going on? There is an element they've got to do the work as well, haven't they? They can't just put it on the platform and so what's the sort of, how do you deal with those kind of situations?
It's a question I get asked quite a lot, and I remember right back at the beginning sitting with a piece of paper having a debate about quality, and coming up with all these strategies about how we were going to manage quality. And what we've learned is that we're not best placed to control quality. Of course, we have processes for moderating the experiences and going through checklists. And in fact, we use AI increasingly for that.
Okay.
But the biggest quality control is the community, because every person who does an experience gets the morning after email, which says, how was your experience? Tell us about your experience. And we've collected tens of thousands of those reviews now. And it becomes very evident to both us and obviously to the host if a particular experience isn't landing with the public. And that's, typically no one's fault. It might be that it's not quite priced right, or it's too short, or it's too long, or it's not easy to find the venue. So we obsess about what those reviews tell us, and we support hosts in evolving and iterating their experiences. And every single morning when I get into the office, our co-working space, the first thing I do every morning is to look at the customer reviews that come in. By far the majority, we're talking 99 point something percent, are 5 out of 5. And obviously some of that is because the team have done an amazing job in finding hosts, and those hosts have referred other hosts and so on. But it ultimately comes down to the fact that our experienced hosts want to share brilliant experiences, and on the whole are very good at listening to the feedback that they receive.
I love that, what you said about obsessing over reviews. I think that's a lesson for all businesses, isn't it? Whether you're running a marketplace or a chip shop or a AI company, Would you say that, like, nowadays, reviews tell you so much, don't they?
Yeah,
About...
I mean, is listening to customers, and that's important in any business. But in a business like ours, a marketplace business, even more so.
You mentioned there that about how you're using AI. That's something. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you're using AI within the business?
Yes,
because you're a very human business, but it's nice that you're also embracing the robots to help with efficiencies, I guess.
Absolutely. So it surprises a lot of people to learn that our core team is just 4 permanent team members, and around that brilliant core team, we are supported by our tech agency, which is a small business based locally who have been a brilliant partner, and also a trusted team of freelancers. But we're at that stage in our journey where, working towards profitability. We hope to get there this year, which for any marketplace, any business is a challenge, but particularly for marketplace business. So we need to get every advantage we can on that journey. And what we've discovered from our testing and learning with AI is it's hugely powerful in a number of different areas, whether that's ideation, creating ideas, kicking things around, developing strategy, copywriting, content categorization. And we often joke in the team that it's like each of us having a couple of full-time assistants who work 24/7 and never go sick. And it's been a game changer for us. Really enables us to be much more efficient with our time. It challenges us in terms of our kind of thinking and ideas. It's been, the last sort of particularly 6-9 months of using it have been very eye-opening.
Yeah, I mean, that does show, doesn't it? Because a lot of businesses are afraid of it and worried about it, losing it. And like I said, you're all about humans and in person. But it does show how it can very much be part of the team, can't it?
Very much. And I would also argue that using it allows you to be more human, because you can spend more time talking to people out there doing things rather than doing some of the tasks that otherwise you would have to be finding time in your day to do.
On that point you made about the team, how like you said, a lot of people will be surprised that it's only 4 permanent members. So why have you decided that that's the model of team that you've gone for?
It's a great question. So marketplaces are notoriously difficult to get to profitability. Even some of the biggest examples out there have taken years and years to get to that point, which essentially is because most of the revenue you generate is not yours, and therefore you're attempting to make a profit on a relatively small chunk of that revenue.
Yeah.
If you put that kind of context of a marketplace business, and in fact e-commerce businesses generally, you have to achieve scale to get to profitability, coupled with the economic context that we all find ourselves operating in, means that we need to be super efficient. Shaping a business with a small core team and supplementing that with trusted freelancers and external support works well for us and enables us to scale without those higher fixed costs.
That's a good point. Some of the things, as you've grown, you've developed, you're now kind of doing your own events with other people, like you're doing drone shows is one of the big things. So it's there's a Christmas one. I've been to a couple of those as well. Do you want to explain how that happened and how it's kind of your own brand now, isn't it, amongst the experiences?
Absolutely. So coming back to an earlier point in our conversation, our biggest challenge is acquiring customers cost effectively. And the cost per acquisition is something that we obsess about. As you may have gathered from this conversation, yes. Data drives a huge amount for
Absolutely.
us. So we were looking at how to solve that. How could we acquire many more customers and users of our platform more cost effectively? Because ultimately that's what drives the growth of our hosts and therefore drives the growth of Yuup. And so we realized that in addition to all of the other brilliant things we were doing from a marketing point of view, we needed to test some different techniques. And I saw New Year's Eve 2022, I saw the London New Year's Eve show, and it was the first time that drones had been used as part of what had previously been a fireworks show. And I thought 2 things. One, that's cool. And I think it was like 5 or 6 minutes of content in the evening's entertainment. But second, I thought, wouldn't it be even more cool if you could take that concept and turn it into a standalone entertainment product? And at that time, drones were being used either in those kind of public events, which were free to attend, or they were being used for brand stunts, flying logos or other activations for big brands. Anyway, I discovered after New Year's Eve that the company that had provided that drone content in the show was based just outside Bristol, which is our home city. So we had a chat, we met up and had a chat and kicked some ideas around. And the following December, which was December 2023, we put on our first public ticketed drone shows. And the basic idea was that we could acquire large numbers of customers who would become users of Yuup. They would meet Yuup through these drone shows, and that would accelerate our growth. So that's what we did. And we created this first show together, took it to 2 venues and put it on sale. We were absolutely blown away when 40,000 people bought tickets for a run of 4 nights.
Right.
And so it kind of took off from there. And it's now very much become a second revenue line in our business.
And are you seeing lots of them become, they think, oh, I can do more with this Yuup thing?
Absolutely. So there's great cross-sell, but at the same time, there's an important role in helping people understand where that product fits in Yuup's overall offering. And so positioning that takes some consideration, because at first glance, a stadium event with 7,000-8,000 people a night is a very different proposition to 8 people doing a pottery class on a Tuesday evening.
Yeah, true.
So helping our audience and our community understand why we're doing that is really important. And obviously part of it is because it's a fantastic experience. And if people haven't been to one of those shows, I'd encourage them to do so, because it's a form of entertainment like nothing you've experienced before. But crucially, it's allowing us to grow and scale our platform, which is great for both sides of the marketplace, and particularly for our hosts, because we're able to introduce tens of thousands of new users.
You said, from the start, you wanted to make a difference. It was a social impact mission, and a lot of businesses say that. I want to make a difference, but for you, you've got a social impact investor, so you kind of have to prove it. But how do you balance that? How do you balance scale versus, and you're now growing into other cities as well, but how do you sort of maintain that community impact, that being local, but at the same time, being a business that has to make money?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're now in 6 cities. I think the key thing for me is constantly engaging with customers and hosts. I spend quite a lot of time talking to our hosts and our customers. And that really guides us on, coupled with the data on where we're going and what we're doing. Look very closely about the not just the cities, but the areas within a city where hosts are joining the platform, and listen to them in terms of what they need and want from the platform, and how we can best support them. One of the things at the beginning of our journey around impact, if I'm entirely honest, we over-indexed. We were very much first and foremost focused on the purpose and the social impact, and that meant that at times we were making decisions that were not as commercial as they needed to be. And what I've realized in time is that getting that balance right is crucial, because if we're not being commercial, we won't continue to exist. And if we don't continue to exist, we're not helping anyone. So we look at the number of hosts we're onboarding, the level of repeat purchase they're seeing. We look at the growth of our user base, and as we've been discussing, always looking both at the size of that user base, but the level of repeat purchase. But crucially, a massively important measure for us in the context of social impact is this business sustainable? Is it growing from a commercial point of view in a way that allows us to continue having impact? Because if we get that right, then we know we can scale that impact, but it has to make sense commercially. And I think, businesses shouldn't shy away from that, that the two have to go hand in hand, and there's nothing wrong with talking about commercial success and profit as much as talking about the purpose and the impact we want to make.
So we're coming to an end, but one question I wanted to ask, because you very much, you're a Bristol business, you launched in Bristol, and now you said you're in 6 cities, and that has been your strategy, kind of city by city. I mean, that's very relevant for your type of business, but that is an interesting way to expand. It's how a lot of sort of startups start, and then one city. Is that? Do you want to talk a little bit about how you've done that, and how you've nailed it, how you've sort of decided where to go, and how you've
I wouldn't say we've nailed it. Still a work in progress.
Well, nailed it in one city and then gone on to the next. Like, how do you know when it's time? Like when you launched in Bristol, how do you know it was time to go somewhere else? Basically,
absolutely. So one of the our journey in Bristol, we were fortunate to we worked very hard, but to get early success and scale it. And one of the things that we knew from very early on, and all of our investors are very quick to remind me, is that we had to prove our ability to do that thing in multiple places. But also, even more importantly, in order to have the level of impact that we want to make, we need to be able to scale this business. And what we identified was that scaling city by city or regional population by regional population was the right route for our business. And we tackled that by looking at those cities where we felt there was a strong creative base, because all of our hosts are ultimately offering, an experience with kind of creativity at the heart. So looking at a city to say, do we think there's going to be lots of supply here, because there's a community they're not necessarily doing it already, but they are, there's a strong group of people who are offering those sorts of experiences. And then equally, does the demographic of the population fit our user base in terms of the sorts of people who typically use Yuup? So those are kind of our starting criteria, if you like. And then every time we go somewhere, there is still that early period of really hard hands-on work to get out there and meet people and tell people about the platform. And it's fair to say we've made some mistakes along that journey in terms of learning what works and what doesn't.
Exactly. And just finally then, what are your plans if we were here in 5-10 years time? Will you be in like 300 cities? Drones flying around the world. What's the plan?
So short term, we're focused on 2 things. One is continuing to scale our 6 existing cities and getting them all to the point where they're at the scale that Bristol, our founding city, is, and rolling out the drone shows. We're currently finalising plans for a winter season of the drone shows, which we'll see that product go all around the UK, which is super exciting because that in itself unlocks access to new communities. But in the midterm, we are very excited about expanding into other cities. So I'd love to see the business launch in Manchester, for example, and many other communities across the UK. And ultimately, we have great ambitions beyond that. So I see Yuup as a brand and platform working anywhere. So, taking it outside the UK would be the ultimate ambition through that journey, possibly through partnership or acquisition, but essentially taking everything we've learned and using that as a basis to scale up.
Amazing. Well, as you know, I'm a big fan of your business, but any small business that's helping hundreds of other small businesses is amazing. So Dominic, thank you for joining me on the Small Business Sessions.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much. You've been watching Enterprise Nation's Small Business Sessions podcast, powered by Vodafone Business as part of our business.connected campaign. For free digital skills training, head to enterprisenation.com/business connected or search business.connected. Don't forget to like the video, share it, and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you next time.